Hello all, and welcome back. I'm being the Puzzle Streak Ladder. We are currently on our 26th puzzle, and we expect to get 30 today. Starting with a 1747 rated puzzle, and this one is an endgame puzzle. So it seems like white and black both have 2 pawns each, and currently white's actually attacking one of our pawns twice. So there is something to be done. So the first thing that kind of springs to mind for me is what if we just take the pawn? If we do take that pawn, um, the king will obviously take back, and the downside of taking it is that we've allowed white access to this h4 square, and as long as the white king is on h4, this g4 pawn is going to be well protected. That would just result in a draw, I think, because um, we can try g takes h4, king takes h4, and king to f4. Then, I believe king to h3, and even if we try and maintain that opposition, with king to f3, the king can go back to h4. So just to illustrate that, pawn takes h4, king takes h4. We play here to f4. He actually goes back to h3. We try and maintain the opposition with king f3, but then the king goes back to h4. And that is simply a draw, I think. Um, that doesn't seem like it would be the puzzle solution to me. So, uh, another option I see is to actually like maintain the pawn on g5 somehow. And we can do that through defending it with king to f4. The really good thing about this is it's White's move next actually, and he is in Zugzwang, I believe. Because let's take this slowly. King to f4. Um, if pawn takes on g5, our pawn takes on g5, and white is going to have to move to a square which leaves its defense of g4, after which we can just scoop up this pawn, and we're actually in front of the pawn while white's king would be behind it. So it's an easy promotion from there. Um, if king to f4 and he decides to not take the pawn, um, let's say he plays king to g6 or something. Then we actually take this pawn on h4, and after he takes on f6, um, we run our pawn, and I believe we are um, one tempo faster. So let's just go through that again. Okay, don't click anything. Right, king to f4, um, pawn to, king to g6, pawn takes on h4, king takes on f6, h3, um, g5, h2, g6, and we promote. Um, his next move would be g7, after which I believe we can start giving checks and somehow reach the g8 square eventually with our queen. So yes, I believe that must be the solution. I don't really see anything else because if we move the king anywhere else, literally, he'll be able to take twice on g5, and he'll be easily winning after that, I think. So yes, king to f4 must be correct. He does take, I think the more testing line was actually king to g6, but we just have to take back now and win this pawn, and we're all good. Okay. Um, so there's this pawn like a pawn and black side. Um, Nothing going on with our king. Um, and this queen is way into white's camp. So I'm almost kind of thinking of trapping it. Um, the most direct way to attack it would be maybe rook to f1, but then queen to h4, and we don't really have anything. And another thing we notice if we just look to attack the most obvious piece on the queen, um, the thing we would notice just automatically is this knight is actually um, in a very precarious position. If we move the rook to attack the queen, it must move to a square which defends the knight at the same time. He won't play, um, let's say, queen to e3, for example. That would just lose his knight directly. So, queen to h4 is the blocker for this rook attack idea. So what if we actually use the other rook? If we use the other rook, this rook is maintained on the h line, and I noticed that if the queen goes to h4, um, and the rook is still on h1, um, as seen in our previous lesson, when we have a piece that's X-raying a major piece like that, we look for ways to remove the piece in between. So we can actually move the bishop with tempo, and that queen would be taken on the next move. So yes, queen h4 is not a safe hideout if rook to f1. Therefore, queen will move to a place where it will not be able to defend the knight. Let's say queen to g3, for example. After this, we can actually just take the knight, and we don't have to worry about, let's say, queen g5 check, for example, poking this king and the rook, because the knight is actually blocking the queen's diagonal there. So yes, that makes the most sense to me. And let's continue with the puzzle and play it. So yes, he does go to e3, but now we can just take the knight, and that's good. It's a good puzzle, and we've got a very similar looking puzzle here. Um, Actually, I think it's the exact same but mirrored. Um, wow, that's hilarious. Yes, it is the same exact concept, I think. King to f5, and if the king actually moves here, we can just take the pawn, and if he takes our pawn, we take back, and no matter where the king moves, we take his pawn next. That's pretty hilarious, actually. Okay, I'm pretty confident with this one. So let's play it, and it ends the exact same way with the king stepping forward and leaving his pawn undefended. Okay, um, it must be exceedingly rare to get two puzzles like that in the same session. But okay, right. Um, this one looks a bit confusing. This king is just way out in the open like this, and it's honestly susceptible to mating nets. From my experience, when the king is kind of surrounded by these pieces and there's a rook in the vicinity. But here, there really isn't any good checks we can give. Um, Knight here obviously doesn't work. Knight here doesn't either. The only like check, to be honest, is h4, and it's a good thing that h4 immediately wins. because we notice that the king is the only one defending this rook. And after h4, just because of the placements of the minors, the king has to step to a square where it can't defend the rook anymore. I believe is only two legal moves there are king takes h4 or king h6. In either case, we would take the rook. So I really don't see anything better here. I believe he just directly play it. Yes, he does take on h4, but now we can take the rook. Okay, um, this king looks awfully open, but so does our king, to be fair. But the good thing is it's white's turn to move, so we do have the tempo advantage. First check that might come to mind is queen to f8 check. Um, Black's only legal move is king to c7. Um, but the problem over there is there really isn't any follow-up. We can try queen to c8. It looks pretty like menacing, but king actually steps outside of the comfort of his pawns into b6, and even if we do give a check on d8, king kind of continues this forward momentum, um, zigzagging towards the center. And I believe we are losing the thread there a little bit. I don't think we'll be able to keep delivering checks in that situation, especially when the king comes to c5 or to d4. And at that point, it's actually kind of starting to pose a threat towards our own king. Um, you can maybe imagine a situation where he's able to take on d3, and then all of a sudden, queen to c2 becomes a threat for black. So that's what kind of makes me discard queen to f8 check. It does look tempting, and I can see a lot of players playing queen f8 without thinking. But no, that must not be it. Black's escape path is too definitive there. Queen h8 is pretty much a worse version of queen f8. So I'm discarding that too. Worse version because queen h8, king to c7, and don't even have like we don't really have any better checks after that. Um, so that mustn't be it either. The other check, apart from the back rank ones, is actually queen takes d6 check. And this one looks immediately more promising because if you do give a check on the back rank, the king always has a c7 square. But if we play queen to d6, um, black can't escape to c7. And in fact, his only legal move is king to a8, after which it's fairly obvious to see that black's king is going to be trapped in the back rank. So queen to d8 is just directly checkmate, I think. So is queen to f8. So for that reason, I expect they'll stop after queen to d6. It's two winning moves after that. So okay, they do continue. Um, but here I believe playing either of these two moves is fine. So I'll just go for d8 and we do solve the puzzle. So we've reached 1758, round 30, and yes, I will see you in the next part.